Call it.
Ka-chow, homebrew community.
What's up, my homie brewers?
This is TC.
This is Big Mike, and you're listening to Brew Strong.
That's right. Travis and Mike here while Jamil is away. Today we have special guest Robert Bell with Hogshead Brewing or Brewery. Brewing or Brewery.
Brewery.
Brewery in Denver. They make outstanding cask ales. We talked about that in the last show, how you can adapt his techniques to make hopefully also outstanding cask ales. And we have our great friend Neil Spake on as well. Uh, he's not near as shadow as he looks on video. You know, if you're live and you're seeing him on video, if you're watching this on YouTube in 4 to 6 weeks or so, you can see us. Elsewise, it'll be on the podcast coming up. I do
YouTube.
want to YouTube.
YouTube.
Yes, thank you. Video be on YouTube
We're
as the
on the
podcast.
YouTube.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah. I want to point out that Facebook has rolled out recently, and it'll probably rolled out. Well, it will be rolled out because I think it's effective almost immediately. Videos are taken off of Facebook after 30 days, so this one's going to ride on Facebook for 30 days before it's pulled down. But JP will be putting them on YouTube should they survive our shenanigans. All
Maybe.
right.
And I would say that it's Brewing Network on YouTube, correct?
Yes,
TC?
it's the
Yes.
Brewing
We
Network
don't
channel.
have
Thank
a
you.
until we go global, we're not going to be our own Brew Strong thing. We're still a part of the Brewing Network. So,
That's correct.
I mean,
And so
even
you,
then, we'll still be a part of the Brewing Network.
absolutely. And you get to see all the shows that Brew Network has, not just Brew Strong when you go there. And you know who else is great with podcasts? We had them on a few months back. Our good friends at Blickman Engineering.
Oh yeah.
Blickman and Anvil are our sponsors since forever on this show. I think since day one. They want us to remind you it's tax refund season. And what better time to upgrade your brewing setup? Hopefully, you get a nice big fat check, and now you know where to spend it. Blickman Engineering has everything you need from quality homebrew systems to professional grade equipment to make your brew day easier. Plus, a full lineup of accessories. And the best part, their expert team is with you every step of the way, ensuring you get the right gear for your brewing goals. Mike is showing his Blickman beer gun. It
I
is an
showed you my
outstanding
gun.
product.
It's my
Yeah, here
love
you
gun.
go.
My love beer gun.
Okay. Yeah.
That's your rifle or your gun, Mike.
This is my rifle. This is my gun. One is for canning beer. One is for fun.
There you go. Yes, and honestly, the beer gun it's got to be one of the least appreciated accessories that you can
Oh
own. I
man.
mean,
Oh,
we get
that
them.
yeah.
We try to bottle a couple times, and some of us get frustrated, and some of us catch on. And I mean, I can't compete without it. I don't have another way to fill bottles that's not going to be just like horrible beer.
Mhm.
I'm also a fan of the Anvil equipment. Their foundry is that's my kettle. I went to electric, and I can't believe how less pain in the ass it is compared to propane and trying to regulate your temperatures and stuff. You know, it's just excellent equipment.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Anvil crucible. Is it the Crucible is their conical fermenter?
Yes.
Yeah, and that I have a 14-gallon version of that, and I have won awards making beer out of that thing. It is fantastic. English ales. I used to make a little
Nice.
bit of ESB in those. It's kind of nice. I don't have to dry hop. I just got all the cool, accessories and cooling and control and all that stuff that I need. So Blickman, innovate
So
your brew day.
there you go. I wish they would adopt that. Don't settle for less. Go to blickmanengineering.com and get everything you need for your brew day. All right. Today's show is a live Q&A or a mail-in Q&A. We have both. I will do my best to give priority always to anyone who is actually live on Facebook. That is the rule. And past that, we have a mandate to answer every question ever sent in. Whew. Working on it, boiling it down. We're going to knock some out tonight. New questions come up first every time, and Facebook comes up right along with them. So we're going to get these done. Uh, let's see. Mike, did you want to talk about a certain story about a brewery before we get into our first question?
No.
Okay.
Wait, I need a little refreshing. What?
Was it Alibi you said did the open top fermenting?
Oh yeah, the Alibi fermenters up in Incline Village in Tahoe. they ferment, and then they do the first couple days in an open fermenter, and then they actually spooned after that. And I have a good buddy of mine, shout out Martin. He does the same thing at his home brewery, and the beer is fantastic. And I really encourage people to try that, because as our good buddy the Pope Jamil will talk your ear off about open fermentation driving yeast character. It's a good time.
So what's interesting, and I've seen breweries in England that have this totally open fermenting, and you were telling me even that at home he does buckets with practically open tops,
Yeah,
correct?
so he's using the brew buckets, and he puts just a piece of sheet metal over the top of them to keep them from being contaminated. But he's trying to drive that yeast character with as little CO2 blanket as possible. Let them kind of be lively, and my whole thing is I like to think of what Jamil was talking to me about this one time, and he was saying like it's like the opposite of pressure fermentation, where the theory with pressure fermentation is you get cleaner beers, you get less ester expression, you get less yeast character. And so by going the other way, where you're actually evacuating the CO2 as it's produced, and reducing the dissolved CO2 in the beer, by doing that, you're actually pushing more yeast character and expression. And it's really exciting to try out. And I've really tasted the results. I'm really a big fan of that. If you're going for a very character driven by the yeast beer, it's a good thing to try. That's all I'll say about it. So
Yeah. What I love about that, and I wish we had a Q&A, I could say, well, Tom wrote in about this. What I love about that is the fact that we have Robert on, and Robert's making extremely flavorful beers, and in a very traditional British manner. The result is extremely British. And Neil, you've been in English breweries like I've been in English breweries, and they're a mixed bag. They're doing it both ways. Um, I think the other way people have attacked that is with yeast selection, just as we do with non-English style beers. Is some English yeasts are going to produce more esters, and I think even Fuller's is full on conical these days, aren't they, Neil?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. So it's another trick, and it will definitely give you some good results if you do it well. But it's not. I would say it's not as necessary as we once thought it was, as long as you're selecting the proper yeast. But you should play with it because it's very interesting.
I'll play with it. Wait, what are we playing with?
Not the love gun.
Whoa,
All right.
whoa.
All right. So Jeff writes in, what about a show on brew sculptures? I'd be interested to hear opinions on single tier, tippy dump, gravity fed, brew easy, etc. What would I be looking for when making a choice? What should I be looking for between brands to buy quality sculpture? Any thoughts Jamil and John might have on the subject? Going to disappoint you there because they're not on the show today. I looked at the show library before sending this. If I missed this idea, if I missed where this idea was on previously, could you direct me? So Jeff, I'll give you a real quick on why I chose this as a Q&A and why I don't envision a show on it. For me, your equipment is specific to how you want to brew. A tiered system versus a flat system versus a tippy dump. Well, tippy dump means you want to brew on a very expensive system. Personally, I'm not a fan of tiered system. I know my beer system is tiered to a degree, but it looks extremely stable. I get nervous with anything that's hot enough to melt my face off above my face. So there's a lot of great equipment out there, and starting with Blickman, our longtime sponsor. There's other equipment out there as well. You got to figure out your technique, and then figure out what bells and whistles you need, and look at your budget. It's my recommendation on that. And so I kind of stole an entire answer on that without answering the question. But if you guys had any comments on what systems you feel work for you, again, I had a chance to prepare, and I'm blindsiding you all with this question.
Well, to promote your sponsor, everything I own is Blickman, and I absolutely love it. I would like to make the move like you have done to electric,
Mhm.
So far, it's been cost prohibitive, not because
Oh
of,
yeah.
but because of getting the outlet installed.
Yeah.
Because Teslas are so popular in Austin. Uh, but the
You're trying to
beauty
hang.
is,
Yeah.
I have the Blickman tower, right? And right now I
Mhm.
have all the gas burners. It's all driven by propane, and I have the controller, the old style controller. But I'm in a perfect position where I can modify my kettles. I can adjust my tower wherever I need it
Mhm.
to go to electric, and I mean it's awesome. And so I can't say enough good things about Blickman. Every pot I own is
And
Blickman.
you like the ability to tier your system to a degree
I
as
do to a
necessary.
degree, yeah, but
Yeah.
I'm kind of like you. I got a little fearsome. I was lifting, I'm getting too old too to lift pots, so I pretty much pump everything.
Yeah.
Like my hot liquor tank is barely above my mash, and the mash is only high enough above the boil kettle to gravity feed it in, and everything else I just pump. Whirlpool I pump. So
Yeah.
that brew sculpture from Blickman has just been outstanding.
So Robert, I imagine you have pumps at your brewery.
Yeah, yeah, and actually, I was thinking back to my days of brewing on like 10 gallon systems. Um, I mean, for years I was just gravity, you know. I mean, everything I had was just gravity fed. Um, I for a period of time before a brewery that I worked for opened, they had like a 1 barrel system that was it was a 3 vessel 1 barrel system, kind of like a Ruby Street, if you guys are familiar with like
Heck
a
Mhm.
yeah,
Ruby
Mhm.
right.
Street
Yeah.
system. It had 2 pumps, hot liquor tank, mash tun, kettle, plate chiller. I I have to tell you, like, I couldn't imagine. I When I was looking at expanding on a homebrew system, I was looking at the vertical, like, tiered structure for gravity. But I like you, I was afraid of the idea of having hot liquids that high above my head, you
Right.
know. I still am. But so when I had three vessels that were all horizontal, I thought that with 2 pumps that was probably the easiest way I had to work from a homebrew standpoint, I would
Yeah.
say. But yeah, in my brew house, yeah, I use essentially 2 pumps. One is a hot liquor pump. I have a hot liquor pump that drives to the mash tun, and my mash tun goes to a grant, which goes to my kettle, which then goes to my heat exchanger that goes to my fermenters. It's a very basic setup.
Yeah. We should have talked about a grant in the last show. That's a gravity feeding off your mash. That's probably something very specific. Yeah, I
Like a
used to
little
use a
wet
grant.
well for your pump.
Yeah, yeah, I used to use a grant when I was on a 10 gallon system.
Yeah,
Uh, it's a wonderful thing. So
yeah,
so Mike,
yeah.
I
you've got balls of steel, and you don't mind having 180-degree water above your head.
w-
Um,
well, you got to think. So I daylight as a wastewater process engineer, and I've got shit water 50 feet above my head at any given time.
That sounds
I
way
mean,
worse. No, I'm
yeah,
just kidding.
yeah. I mean, hot or gross. What do you want?
all
So,
right, it sounds pretty
and then
shitty,
this guy,
Mike.
and you got to also remember, I'm 6'6", so when I'm standing over here, I can actually peek into this liquor tank
Yeah,
behind me. But
and also,
I honestly think for the home brewer, the big driver should always be budget, and then the second driver should be um, the features that you're looking for your beer, right?
hmm,
I think so much of what people do is they want to look cool, or not everybody, but I think so much of what kind of could be a thing that could drive people to spend way too much money, as I have on cars and other adventures when I was young, is that looking cool and having the coolest piece of equipment. Is like I ended up home making my system, and these are modern tanks, right? Like the I do a rims for the heating of the mash tun, so that has a pump. I gravity sparge, I gravity strike. So I was also thinking in terms of control of pressure for sparging. I didn't really want to have to deal with all that, so it's kind of nice. I have my Blickman auto sparge. Um,
That's good.
and you know, I honestly think kind of where you're at, TC, is like for most homebrewers, if you're doing less than a half barrel, a single vessel, really nice setup, you could do anything I can do and do it almost, you know, as good or maybe even better than I can. I mean, I I really think for me is like I like the three vessel just because I'm a fan of professional brewing and like that classic, you know, fly sparge to the kettle and then, you know, all that stuff. Like I don't know, maybe I'm old school. I went to school with Danforth, so you know he's teaching us all about steels mashes,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
mash tons and Lauda tanks, Lauda tons, and all these things. So I don't know. I guess I'm a little romantic about the multiple vessels. So, but for most homebrewers, I think budget's number one because we are hobbyists at the end of the day, and then number two is the features that you need to accomplish the beers you want to make. And I know that there's different levels of need for different beers, and you know, so you got to really consider those things. And the big ones are mash efficiency, um, you know, cooling for the wort after boil and things like that, and whirlpooling and whatnot. So that's where I'm at with it. I'm a big fan of all the systems. I don't really have anything I wouldn't recommend, but in terms of your sculpture, as he was asking about, I mean, that's where I'm at. Is like just think about what you want to do and how much you want to pay, because it can go big quick.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think we're mostly saying it's what fits you, it's what you want,
Yeah.
and it's what fits your budget. So I mean, there's a lot of great systems out there. And I've brewed on a good handful of them, and you're going to land on what you land on. I would say get with your buddies more so than listen to us about what's great. Get with your buddies, brew on their system, see what they do, see what kind of work is involved, and figure out what kind of system you want. And then give me a phone call, and I'll tell you which system Blickman sells is the best. You know.
There you go.
I would also say too, just a little caveat, go to your local homebrew shop and try to just hang out and talk to people who've done it, talk to the guy who's behind or the gal who's behind the desk. And those people usually have a lot of experience, and what what you would specifically down to the type of beer you want to make, they might be able to give you the right direction. I think local homebrew shops are getting kind of hit hard lately, and
Yeah,
go there. Go to your local homebrew shop. Otherwise, you won't have one.
No, that's
that's a great point. Yep. All right, so we're going to take our first break here, and we'll be right back with some more questions. And we'll also check the chat, see if we have any questions coming on the chat. All right, right back. All right, we're back doing a Q&A session here.
And dance.
And dance. We dance in the breaks, that's right. TC Big Mike here hosting. We have our great friend Neil Spake and Robert Bell from Hogshead Brewing here doing a Q&A show. All right, so next question I have here, Kent asks, what off flavors have you found can sometimes be mistakenly identified in competition beers? For example, BJCP states that kettle caramelization is often mistaken for diacetyl. Are there any other such false positives you have noticed in competing and judging? If so, what are they? He gives a little more color here, and this tale is great for having Neil and Robert on as our guests right now for various reasons. I've got an English bitter that just finished primary fermentation and has a slight buttery but pleasant aroma. I pitched plenty of healthy yeast, and the beer has been at final gravity for a few days now, 10-13. So I figured diacetyl ought to be cleaned up, especially because when I take a sample, there is still yeast suspended. The more I smell it, I wonder if really I'm mistaking the oily English noble type hop aroma. We'll get to that one also separately for diacetyl. I did 1 ounces of pellets at Flame Out, 5 gallon batch, half EKG, East Kent Goldings, half Styrian Goldings. The yeast, West Yorkshire. My first time using that yeast, being English descent, perhaps it is more prone to diacetyl, and I really am smelling that. Keep up the quality programming. So, gents, if you don't mind, let's maybe tackle the diacetyl first, then we can come back to some other off flavors if we can come up with a brief list of that.
Yeah, I can say definitively that English yeast strains are prone to diacetyl. I mean, English beers in general are prone to them. In our brewery, we put every beer through a diacetyl rest where we let it free ride up to 70 degrees, let it sit there for 3 days before we drop temp and crash the beer, which will drop the yeast out of suspension and clear the beer. I know from a home brew standpoint that might be a little more difficult to achieve a diacetyl rest. That being said, it is acceptable to have a certain level of diacetyl in English style beer. It may not win awards a lot of times, but it's absolutely acceptable stylistically. An overabundance of diacetyl, of course, is going to be off-putting and not good. But I wouldn't stress too hard unless you're having extreme issues with diacetyl. But yeah, a diacetyl rest is always helpful. Taking a sample, heating it up in an enclosed bottle, shake it up, smell it. If it smells like butter, you got diacetyl.
Or diacetyl test, outstanding.
A lot of times you can get it to, finish out if you let it ferment for a period of time, but you know, you may end up with a certain amount of it. But that's from my experience as an English beer brewer, that's what I've run into.
I'm going to give you a list of questions, and I'm just going to go ahead and take off the rest of the night. Now, I have some more at the end, but you covered some great points. Neil, you want to throw anything in as an outstanding? You're
Yeah,
a national beer judge.
I'll throw it in from the beer judge thing. I'm a
Yeah.
nationally ranked BJCP beer judge. I've given beer judging tests. I've taken them. I proctored an exam in San Antonio last weekend, as a matter of fact. So Robert is totally right. If you are concerned about entering this beer and you're worried about diacetyl being in it, any knowledgeable judge will know that certain levels of diacetyl are acceptable and they should not ding you in a competition for it unless it's overbearing, right? If the aroma is that strong, movie popcorn smell,
Mouthfeel.
you're going to get a bit dinged for that because that,
The slick
even the
mouthfeel.
best English beers, it's not that prominent. The other thing I would caution is taste the thing. If there's slickness to it, that's
That's a
one
good
of the
point.
things somebody's going to pick up the quickest as a
Yep.
judge. More the slick than the butter flavor. But if that is a low level and it just has like a slight butterscotchy note to it or something, I mean, I wouldn't be a bit afraid to enter it if you know the competition you're going into has qualified judges because they should be knowledgeable enough to know. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, that's outstanding. Also, we're hitting 1,000. Don't worry, when it comes to me, I'm gonna screw it up for you guys. Mike, you've been entering competitions. Did you enter your British beers back in the day?
Yeah. No, I actually won a best bidder competition. It was a club competition, but no, I will just say that the big one for me, because he was talking about misconstruing off flavor for what's supposed to be there and kind of where we're supposed to be. And I think to kind of just add to what these guys are saying is when things are wrong, they're going to affect multiple facets of the beer. So like I think that in a beautiful British beer, diacetyl will be a plus. It'll be something that you enjoy. It'll be something that you really like. It adds to the flavor of the beer. And I always think when diacetyl goes really bad, it's like that slickness, that buttery, oily. It just ruins your perception of what a beer should be. And then I would think another big one that people kind of screw around with and they don't really, oh, it's broken. It's like, no, it's just beautiful is sulfur. And I think, especially with lagers,
Agreed.
sulfur off flavors can sometimes be when they get to be cabbage and like vegetal and like you're tasting this kind of eggy or something, that's when it's broken. And but some of these more subdued, kind of sulfury, they kind of make the beer a little bit more interesting when they add to the flavor. I would always say if you're drinking the beer and you catch that flavor, does it make you feel good about it? You know, like does it make you feel like, God, what was that? And like you kind of pull back. And I think us as kind of beer drinkers, we kind of can have that vitriol reaction and or you know or kind of over analysis to something that maybe could be wrong. And it's like, step back and go, do I kind of enjoy that? Do I kind of want that? Does it feel good? Like, does it ruin it? And I think the big things are mouthfeel. Does the beer have the mouthfeel it's supposed to have? The aroma, is the aroma now being affected by that flavor? Like, are you getting butterscotch on the nose really heavy on top of the oil, on top of it's like, okay, that beer has the fermentation has a serious issue. Same with the sulfur. Is like, am I getting a ton of sulfur on the nose? And then when I taste it, it's all cabbage and sulfur. It's like, okay, is it taking over and ruining my beer? I think delicate, especially in classic styles, those little tiny hints and kind of dressing of those flavors are pluses. So that's where I'm at.
It's,
I think
you
that's
guys-
an excellent point, and I think
Yeah.
the sulfur is a really good example. I'm glad you brought that
Right.
up
Yeah.
because there are some judges that think they know lagers inside and out,
Oh no. No.
and the least hint of sulfur, and they'll ding the crap.
They just write it off.
Like, no, pal. There's
I'm
tons
gonna
of good
unwind
stuff.
this just a little
Some of
bit
this
because
is-
you guys teed me up so much. You guys got me going.
DC got
Can I
teed
make
up.
one point here too?
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
going back to cask
Yeah,
oxidation.
yeah.
There
Yeah.
you go. There's
Mhm.
one that would get you dinged in every competition. Your beer's oxidized, right? But in cask beer, there's a certain level of oxidation that's not off-putting. It's complementary.
Complimentary.
It's
I
developing
think
the
that's what we're
character.
talking about. Like
Yeah.
sulfur in a lager is complementary to a certain level.
Mhm.
Diacetyl in an English beer is complementary to a certain level.
Certain level.
You know?
So
Excellent point.
I'm gonna. You guys are giving me so much good stuff. This medium questions
We're
is
on a
turning into a
roll,
long question.
TC.
Yeah. So Robert, you said it. The forced diacetyl test. I shied away from it for I don't know why, for how long, but you need to do it. You need to learn what a forced diacetyl is. It's as Robert said, you're going to heat up a sample. What you need to do is keep a non-heated sample and a heated sample and let them both get back to room temperature. I'm rushing it because there's so much about this question. And compared it to, because you might not even know what diacetyl smells like. Do an off flavor course. You can't help how your beer is judged. Unfortunately, you can just get pissed off about it or not care about it. And yeah, some of this is part of the character of your beer. Is our friend Mufasa. I think Neil, you know Mufasa?
No, I don't.
Oh, he former pro now retired and works at my local homebrew shop, the only one left in the Houston proper. So every American light lager is defined by its flaw. So they're like the number one selling beers on the planet, shamefully, and they're all defined by their flaw. You're gonna get some green apple in Bud Light. You're gonna get these off flavors in each one of these, and these are the top selling beers that exist. as part of certain styles. It's just there. You know, a little bit of diacetyl, some oxidation coming into your British ales. You're not sitting on your barley wine for a year because you want it to be fresh.
Mhm.
You know,
Back.
but so what
We
are
want that
judges going to make?
expression. We
Right.
want that expression.
What are judges going to make mistakes about? They're going to make a lot of mistakes, unfortunately. And as Mike was pointing out, they tend to look at what's wrong with the beer instead of what's right with the beer. You
Or
know,
how
and
maybe the little pieces that might be in a perfect world are wrong, actually push the beer to a better place, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Sorry, I
Yeah.
just wanted to
So,
finish that.
I like that.
you're going to add
Yeah.
it to your poetry.
Yeah.
If you
Maybe
guys
I
didn't
could-
listen to the last show, go back and listen to the last show. Robert had the greatest description of brewing. It was poetry. It's gorgeous. All right. So Kent, that's part of your. You probably didn't like all that answer. I don't always talk well of judging. I am a beer judge, and I am going for national. I'm not there yet, but you don't get the results you'd like all the time. It's unfortunate. Uh, don't let it ruin your day. All right, let's see. So Adam writes in and he says hello to all. Thank you, Adam. Hello, right back at you. Thanks for the show, and big thanks to Blickman for sponsoring. This is how Adam knows how to get his question read. Also, the other way to get your question read is just send it in. We're going to read them all.
Hey, but if you say Blickman, maybe we do a search, maybe we don't. Who knows?
Adam brews on a Grainfather G40. His mash efficiency is 79%. Brewhouse efficiency is 73% per GF calculation. So Grainfather, I don't know if he's. I know a lot of people use Brewfather on the web, but he's saying Grainfather. I'm not familiar with Grainfather software specifically. Adam's issue is he never seems to end up with 20 liters or 5 gallons of beer. Last batch, I started boiling for 1 hour with 6 gallons of wort at 1072 at start of boil. I finished with 425 at 1082. I didn't do the math, but the math on points usually works well. Math on bricks, not so much. Probably a quart or so was left from Whirlpool. I added some sterile RO, 0.6 gallons, to get up to 4.75 gallons. I adjusted pH of this RO addition to 5.5 for adding. That's not a bad idea. Just a little bit of RO is not going to be the biggest effect on your pH, though. I'm at a loss how and when I can make water adjustments or start off with the right amount to hit the recipe numbers. What do I do to dial in my equipment profile to be more consistent with end results? Thanks in advance for help in this deep question. Okay, so I'll take a quick stab at it, and you gents can all put more on top of it. There's more to put on top of it. And Adam's still brewing because this is not an old question. And thanks for writing in, Adam. Start with more water next time. Just start with more until you end up with what you want. My understanding of the old school Grainfathers is they don't have necessarily not temperature control, because what you go to boil, you go to boil. They don't have percent control. I think they're all or nothing. So when you go to boil, it's on 100%. So your boil off is fixed. You can do a boil off test to figure out how much you're going to boil off. So you know how much you want to end up with. Has to be that plus the boil off. Just do it a couple more times, and I think you'll get it. If you guys need me to reread anything or want to say, oh, you're so wrong, it's not that easy, you got to do this, that, and the other. And Robert, I think when we come to you, you might, I don't know how you brew, but you might have a different perspective, because when I talk to pros, you guys look at it differently. Like you might have a 10 barrel system, but I know some brewers stop sparging when they hit their gravity. If it's a little high, if it's a little low, doesn't matter. They've hit their gravity. You gravity.
I don't brew that way, but
Oh, there you go. Good. So, do you have any tips to help Adam hit his volumes?
Oh man, like
On your pro system, can you, like, when you go to boil, is it just on? Is it steam or direct fired?
it's direct fire.
So
direct fire on my kettle. I have a hot liquor tank. I dial up my temp on that the night before. Hit my mash temp. Um, I mean, more than anything, I would say, like, I don't really worry that much about volume on mash. I'm talking about my system, it's just
mhm.
my day to day. Like, everybody else's system may be different, their mileage, But what I do is I just mash in until I'm done. I've got an auger that's driving grain in at a specific rate. I have water coming in at a specific rate, and I just try to hit my mash temp the whole way through. I just watch my temp gauge. I don't get overly concerned with my liquor to grist ratio because I usually end up pretty much in the same ballpark anyway. I usually shoot for about like 1.25 or so on my system, but that is what it is. As a home brewer, I batch sparged and like did everything in my mash tun with a single infusion. Um, but essentially I'm doing the same thing on the pro system. Where I make up my volume is on the sparge. And when I'm watching my level, I try to get to a 10 barrel level while I'm, on the sparge. Whatever I get on my mash, I'll take that gravity reading and then I'll just sparge off until I get my volume and get that gravity reading. But what I want to make sure I don't do is run my sparge too thin and start pulling off tannins
Yeah.
from the grain husks. So I usually, will never get to that point. I don't on my system. I never get to a point where I hit volume and I've gone below a level that I'm comfortable with. Um, but that would be my cutoff point. If I was gonna say anything, I would just cut it off then. If you're looking for gravity, if you're dialing up your recipe, your efficiencies, to a certain degree, um, I would imagine that you're probably not going to be too far off on either end. And if you are, then I would adjust boil time for that or water back at the end if you're too far over or whatever. That's what I do on my pro system. I just liquor back if I'm high, or I boil longer if I'm low, you know.
Is he talking about fermenter full too, or is that
Oh,
part of
was
his
I
question?
wrong? Am I
No,
talking
I,
No,
no,
different?
I like
No,
the
no, no,
like
no.
that's a good.
No, no.
That's kind of what I do. I was just thinking, but to finish it off, is that the next step? Is he also asking about that, or
No, so ultimately, I think he got 4.75 gallons at the end, and he added RO to get to 5.5. No. He added RO. Wait. He had to add water at the end, and he doesn't want to add water at the end. He'd rather add it up front.
but is he adding
I
it to his
get.
fermenter or his kettle?
Now this is post boil. Post boil,
Okay,
he was low on volume.
So he's liquoring
okay,
back.
He
Is he
did on this
looking to
occasion.
hit?
into his kettle.
Yeah,
Okay,
but
Is he looking to
it's
hit a gravity, or is he looking to hit a volume?
he's you nailed it. I mean, because hitting both is the magic. Now, us
Right.
as homebrewers, we have a
I
trick
think
that
I
you
was
wouldn't
talking
use.
about that.
But yeah, no, you nailed it. It's 100%.
okay. No,
I
I
mean,
just was curious. I wanted to follow up just a little more.
if you brew a batch and you must hit your volume, well, you might be off on your no, on your gravity. So that means adjust your grain next time. If you must hit your volume, adjust, and now as a home brewer, I can grab some DME. You're not going to throw pounds and pounds of DME. You're not going to waste money on something like that. You're just going to adjust your recipe. So you with a brand new recipe specifically, hitting both, you got to be pretty damn good, you know. And so you can either work to adjust your volumes until you hit your volumes and then adjust your recipes, target one or the other, because hitting both the first time, second time, third time, probably difficult.
Yeah. So I guess if I can cut in real quick, I would just say that for my brewing experience on my brewery, I've actually had a lot of problems getting the fermenter full volume that I wanted. And I was kind of kicking myself, like, what am I doing? I feel like I'm way over on my kettle. I'm way over. I think I should be getting, at flame out, I should have enough water in the kettle to get it, or wort in the kettle to get it over the fermenter. And as much as I can surmise, like, I think there's also, a 10% change in volume from the kettle to the if you're chilling in line. So I use a counterflow heat exchanger. So the 170-degree wort in my kettle is not going to be the same volume as the 70-degree wort in my
No.
Right.
So that's another factor. I don't know if he's doing that, and that's where maybe that could be a little wrinkle to this. And I think the
doesn't
other thing
mention
is
that
like beer
far.
loss, and if you're not using a maximizer, so you're leaving a bunch in your you're leaving a bunch of extra wort in your kettle. If he is talking about fermenter full, but yeah, I can see exactly what we're talking about here. Is you kind of you boil until you get to where you're going to go, and if you trust your efficiency numbers, you kind of know what volume you need to get to the right gravity for your OG. And I would say target that
So
in terms of if you're looking for gravity. So
yeah,
that's my
that
2
thermal
cents.
expansion. No, that was great, Mike. That's it. So that, and it's great you brought up the thermal expansion is far less than you think by numbers, but far bigger than you think when you see it. It's 4% from like 60, 70 up to 212. It's only 4%. Sounds like nothing. It's huge.
But
And that 4% makes a big difference. Now, every measurement you have is going to lie to you at boiling because of what the wort's doing as it's got all these nucleation points and stuff in
Picked up
there.
by bubbles.
Yeah. So that's going to lie to you. So your 170 to 60 or 70 is about 3%, and that's far greater than you think. He doesn't say that that's the issue, but that's a great thing to bring up, Mike.
The other thing I might throw in there too, if you're worried about gravities and OGs, this isn't even really related, but I've noticed that if you use a big wort starter, like you got a big yeast starter, and you throw that bitch in there, I use a tilt so I can get I get the reading before and after.
Yeah.
And you can lose 5 points by adding a 3-liter starter to a 10-gallon fermenter. I mean,
but then you're almost 11 gallons.
I know, and it's like, whoa, so I would also say, like, those are things that happen too on the homebrew scale, not so much pro, but more the homebrew is like, think about things like decanting your starters or
I was
using
trying to
dry
think
yeast.
about how I could work that cheat into my game plan, man.
There you go.
Yeah.
Hang out with us homebrewers, man. We'll corrupt you.
Yeah, you got to make your 3-barrel starter.
All right. Neil, did we destroy this one, or you got some corrections for us?
Although I go back to the question again, you got me confused when you were talking about
I'll see if I can read I'll abbreviate it.
Is he brewing in a grain father?
Yes, the grain father is an all-in-one system. The G40 is a 10-ish gallon total volume. His mash efficiency is nice at 79%. I'd be fine with that. His brew house efficiency is 73. I'd be ecstatic. I leave beer behind, work behind at every step. I brew big and try to bring the core of it to my fermenter. So that doesn't matter. His issue is that he never ends up with 5 gallons of beer. Now he does say beer, so this is possibly post fermentation. But he starts off with 6 gallons, boiled down to 4.25 gallons, which that's a hell of a boil off, by the way.
That's a lot of boil off.
It's a lot of boil off.
Yeah, so that's maybe his boil is a bit long, but at 1082, so maybe 1082 is his target, so he boiled till he hit target. Fix that in the recipe, use more base grain next time. Do my trick, add a little bit of DME, but if you're 425, you're never going to end up with 5 gallons. If you're 425 and you add RO to 475, as I think this says, you're still not going to end up with 5 gallons. And if you add it up to 5.5 and go in your ferment with that, maybe then you're going to get 5 gallons, but maybe then you don't like your gravity, which goes back to adjust DME or adjust your recipe.
Yeah.
We've got lots of
I would
tricks.
also say kettle full should be like 7 or 8 gallons.
Yeah, I'm 7.13
Yeah.
on my 75-minute boils. I'm 7.25 on my 90-minute boils to
Yeah,
get
and I think
6.5 post boil.
yeah, I think a lot of what that is at the homebrew level. I think the geometry of our kettles is more conducive to boil off than like a pro kettle.
I
Yeah.
totally
And
agree.
also like just thermal load, like the ability to
Yep.
get way more vigorous boil than a homebrew or than a pro. Like I've talked to a lot of pro brewers around here, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I lose a couple gallons, maybe like a, even the guys that are doing 30 barrels are like, maybe like a half barrel." I'm like, wow,
I
like
lose a
I'm
half barrel.
losing. I know, like if this was what if you were losing what I'm losing, I mean, I kettle full at 16 for a 10-gallon batch. So
Yeah.
then I'm burning down to 14, 13 and a half. And so if you have that, you would be at 8 going down to 7, 6 and
Mhm.
7, 6 3/4. So to get down to 4 1/4, yeah, you're gonna end up with a short keg, as
Yeah.
they say. So just a thought there.
Mhm.
But
All right. Neil, you good?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. All right. We're going to take a short break and be right back with some more Q&A with our great friend Neil Spake and Robert Bell from Hogshead. All right, we're back. This is a Q&A show. We're live here on Facebook. This video will be transferred to YouTube channel eventually, as same about the time it's put into a podcast. We have it's Big Mike and TC here with our guests today. We have Robert Bell from Hogshead, cask ale brewer extraordinaire. You should listen to the last show and learn all about cask ale and how you can do it at home. And Neil Spake, and Neil's our great friend. Also, really interesting guy. And he loves English ales, and he helped bring that last show together. Thank you, Neil. And we'd love to have Neil on whenever Neil can visit. You too, Robert, but you probably have better things to do. You're a pro and a bunch of amateurs over here, that kind of stuff. All right, let's see. What's next in the chat?
I like Neil's shirt. Can I just say that?
Yes. Can
I called
you
it
talk
out.
about it for a minute?
It's a yes. Be at its best.
I agree.
Yep.
Real ale.
Real ale.
Yeah, they call it. It was. You said. I asked if that was a camera shirt.
It
Is that a
is.
camera?
It is a
Yes.
camera.
That's campaign for real ale.
That's it. Yes.
And we are pro real ale on this podcast.
Absolutely are.
Go out and find some real ale.
That sounds like more like a Viking
Hogshead.
show. Yeah, you go.
Denver, Colorado.
That's
There
it.
you go.
Booyah.
Yeah.
Go to Colorado and get some real ale.
Absolutely. If you haven't been to Hogshead Brewery, if you do go to Colorado, you need to, because
You have to.
Robert, you said there were some other places around the U.S. that do what you're doing, but it's few and far between. And I'm not familiar with any of the others. And I know what you guys do is outstanding. But again, last show tells you he gives us all his. He gives us what we think are all his secrets. I'm sure he's got more of them.
No, that was
all right.
all.
All right. So Matt writes in with 3 independent questions. Let's see if we can break this down. Matt, we may not answer all of your questions today. Hey guys, love the show. Keep it up, etc. I feel the genuineness there, whatever that word is. I love brewing as many styles as possible. And being that I live a fair distance from most of my friends, and I can't be drunk all the time, that's a lifestyle choice. Just most of the time. Yeah, exactly. I brew mainly 2.5 or 3 gallon batches. I also like using small batches to perfect the recipe before brewing a full batch that'll last me 2 or 3 months. I'd love to hear a show dedicated to small batch brewing and how it differs, if at all, from brewing full 5 gallon batches. Okay, let me see. Where's the second 2 questions? You finish on. Okay, this is more of the same. Mainly, I'd like to hear your opinions on how to scale up to 2.5 gallon batches or even 5 or 10 gallon batches. Is it as simple as doubling hop grain weights and liquor volumes, or are there other factors that need to be taken into account? Also, what should I choose as far as my fermenters? Yeah, okay, now he's going deep. And so basically 2.5 gallons. Not around me, she didn't.
Oh, because I'm.
All right. So basically, he's asking 2.5 gallon batch, 5 gallon batch, 10 gallon batch. Any concerns around scaling? Is it's just simple math to go from amongst these smaller ones? And Robert, I think you have a larger scale approach to this that I'm going to try to frame up for you after we try to tackle the small ones first. Neil, have you
All
ever
I can
brewed
say is
only two and
brewing
a half
software
gallons?
is your friend. There's no reason you can't just take a recipe and half the malt content to cut it in half. You can't. You have to do the hardcore math behind it, and that's where brewing software is really helpful.
Yeah.
Whether you use the free online stuff or whatever, they have all those calculations built in, but you should easily be able to schedule, adjust a recipe if you know, okay, it's 90% Maris Otter and 10% Crystal 30 or 50. You should be able to scale that volume wise and IBU wise
Mhm.
to any scale.
So I definitely agree with you on the homebrew scale. We'll come back to some other ones. But yeah,
I can't
100%.
talk commercial. I don't know anything about
Count,
commercial.
Yes.
point, counterpoint,
Yeah.
point on top of point. The big two numbers you have to know in scaling: brew house efficiency
Mhm.
Mhm.
and boil off percentage per
Oh,
hour.
you're right. Yeah.
So what
And
you're
if you
saying is
can,
more a factor of the hardware than it is of the actual recipe.
I think the big word is process. And the two ones that mean a lot to brewers are brew house efficiency, so in the mash efficiency, and then your boil off gallons per hour, or I like to do gallons per hour as a home brewer, barrels per hour big time, but those are where the scale really matters because that's affecting your extract and then your final gravity. So I would say if all things were equal and your little brewery was the same as your bigger brewery, yeah, it's linear. But if you can determine both of those equivalencies and then you can shoot for the same flavor, it gets a little more muddled because extract is a function of sparging and
Mhm.
bed depth and Vorloff temperature and sparge water acidification and blah blah blah. So you could end up with slightly different beers, but I think you could get within the realm of most people's palates by knowing that the processes and those two big ones, the mash efficiency and the boil off, you could get to the same gravity points and you can get to the same alcohol and you could basically make the same beer. But I would love the information from Mr. Hogshead.
So yeah, Robert, you can if you
Robert,
have the
yeah.
experience of scaling
The,
up.
the most amazing thing was I was sitting back and listening to both of those answers, and I was like, you guys are all on it. That you need all of that information in order to replicate a recipe. You need to know your brew house efficiency. You need to know your boil off rate. You need to know the percentages of your grains. You need to know the IBUs you're hitting. All of that is yeah, those are all factors in replicating a beer for sure. Absolutely. um Developing recipes, I mean that's scaling is all about, like, if you have, as Michael was saying, if you have your brew house efficiency and your evaporative rate, you know how to build a recipe based on your efficiency, and you'll know how much you're going to lose and how much you need to gain back.
Mhm.
However, like, going back to what Neil said, if you don't know, like, pounds don't mean anything in brewing. It's percentages that mean something. Like percentages, IBUs, efficiency, they're all numbers that will, to some degree, like, vary from system to system to a certain degree, but percentages of greens and IBUs don't, but efficiency does. And so I agree with both of your answers, to be honest with you.
Yeah, awesome.
I
Nailed
just
it.
repeated it again.
Well,
There you go.
and if I could go a little more into the engineering realm, I like to touch on these every once in a while in the episode. Is so in any kind of piloting for some sort of chemical process, which would be a miniature version of what you would want to scale. Geometry, kind of static pressures, temperatures, all these things are trying to replicate the bigger scale. So I would say if you're building a smaller brewery or you're using a smaller brewery to try to scale recipes, really try to produce something that is got the same brewhouse efficiency, the same boil off, the same kind of things. You want to be able to depend on the fact that that recipe is going to build the same flavor when you go big. Because I think what gets lost a little bit too is like, I love what Jamil says about like, I will give you my recipe. I will tell you exactly what's in it. And there's no way you're going to be able to make it like I do because it's my brewery. Like,
And
so
then he did Can You Brew It and brewed everybody's beer.
I know, right? So he's just a master of, I don't
Yeah.
even want to go there because he's the Pope, right? But I'm just saying from an engineering, like from a chemical process engineering perspective that I have doing pilots at scale to develop design projects that we built into many multiples bigger. I mean, thousands of times bigger. It was about getting the right pressure, right temperature, and we were doing biological stuff. But I would say for a brewery, you want to do the same extract, same boil off, same things that you're getting out of your little brewery that you get out of your big brewery. And if you can do that, then you can directly scale it. Like I'm talking multiply it by the volumes and bam, you're good. But otherwise you might have to, it'll get you close, but you're going to probably, if you loved the pilot brew, if the big one has a different geometry, different style, different way of doing things, you're going to have to kind of pull some levers and tweak it. It'll get you close, but you're going to have to understand that it will be different. Process is huge. That's what I'm saying. It's process. Ingredients are one thing, process and tanks and volumes and temperatures and everything
equipment. So the observation I have that I think is fully in line with what everyone said so far. The observations I've had is going from 10-gallon batches to 5-gallon batches. The equipment was the factor, not the ingredients. So that wasn't a big deal. But going from 10 or 5, as I've done a couple pro-ams, and Robert, I don't know how many pilots you do for your big batches, but the issue I had is my mash efficiency is not what a modern system is as a pro brewer. I mean, my mash efficiency is pretty good now. My new system is like low 80s, but I go to a pro system and they're mid-high 80s. So it changes the extract balance. And you're going to have to fight those numbers to get your beer back, because if your percentage, if those numbers don't match, that's what's affecting it. It's not because I went from 10 gallons to 10 barrels. It's because I went from 83% or in my old system, 78% mash efficiency to 89% mash efficiency all of a sudden. And the extract's different. It's so 2.5, 5 gallons, 10 gallons, it's going to small tweaks in your equipment. When you brew excellent beer because you listen to this show all the time and you get your pro-ams, that's when you're going to have an excellent brewer like Robert say, well, this is my system and this is how we adjust for what your recipe looks like to make it right on my system.
Yeah, that's where it's important to listen to pros like Robert.
That's right. Great. So we actually all had almost the exact same experience. That's amazing. Unheard of.
It's heard of.
It's heard
I'm
of
just
now.
kidding. I don't want to disagree too much. I love you guys.
All right. So let's see a little bit more on his question, different but related. What should I choose as far as fermenters go? Will my usual 5-gallon carboy suffice, or would I get any benefit from using 3-gallon fermenters geometry? How about temperature control, etc.? So he's concerned with the fact that if he had a 10-gallon fermenter, could he do 2.5s? Could he do 5s? I have zero experience on this. And Robert, I was wondering, Sounds like you have a 10-barrel brew house, but you have a 20-gallon fermenter, and sometimes you double batch into it.
We have a 20 barrel fermenter. Sometimes, most of the time, I will double batch into it. But if
Mhm.
I am short on a beer that I only need 10 barrels of, I will brew 10 barrels into a 20 barrel fermenter. I don't have issues with it. Um, I I know other people that'll do half batches that like you know, I mean, I really don't think that it would matter too much if he has a 5 gallon fermenter to do 2.5 gallons in, really. Yeah,
So I think he might have an advantage that you may or may not have. You have jacketed fermenters.
we do.
Do
Yeah.
you have cone
Uh,
jackets or just the wall jackets? Do you have like a
is
cone
that
jacket? And, do you
yeah,
have cone?
cone and jacket, yeah.
Yeah. So if you didn't
Yeah.
have a cone jacket, you doing a half batch could be a big problem with trying to control temperature. But you have a full, you probably maybe it's two separate jackets on your 20, maybe it's
Right,
more chambers than that. So he's going to put his in a cooler and he won't have any hot and warm spots necessarily because the whole thing's in a cooler.
right.
So him half batching is the same thing as you half batching. So yeah, I should go ahead and do it.
You should be fine, yeah.
Yeah.
Send it.
I think he's
We're homebrewers. We can try it again.
yeah, right. That's 2.5 gallons. Yeah.
I think with scaling, accept the fact that you're not gonna, the beer is gonna change. Like, but maybe very slightly, maybe a lot. It depends on the process.
So
I
I
agree with the
combined his.
process approach. That is
Oh
true.
yeah.
It's all
I
about
think the big
process.
one, and I would say the big one is if you're trying to make the same, let's say we're trying to get the same malt flavor with a smaller beer, that's when things go crazy. And I know I'm going off on a tangent, but that's where like I want the same flavor of malt, but I want to make it from 7 to 4% alcohol.
Mm. Yeah,
Those are the ones
that's
that
true.
really get people.
Oh
And then I want to go
yeah,
from
I see
making
what you're
that and
saying.
then scaling it, and that can go. That's fun.
Yeah, changing alternate ABV, trying for this like
Yeah,
yeah, no, that's not his question, thankfully, because no.
I know, right? Those are
All
hard.
right.
There's episodes in Brew Strong they talk about it though. So
It's my life, man. Everything I make is like under 5%. No, it's 5 or under.
yeah, the small beer, as they call it, I just think it's such a cool challenge. It's like something
It
that
is.
you don't have. I think yeast expression is easy to get with high ABV because you've got a lot of sugar, you've got a lot of metabolic activity, and then I think you don't have the same constraints like with a small beer. And then you can use big hops, you can use big malts, you can do all these things. Like, you get so much room by being a lot of alcohol. When you're making a small beer, like a 3.5, 4% beer, you've got to really express yourself and your mastery of the flavors to keep the beer from being cloying, to keep the beer from being empty. It's like you gotta right down the middle, you gotta hit it. And I think that's where the true expression of a brewer is making small beer taste fantastic. So
I
I am
agree.
so excited the way you guys talk about these cast beers.
Yeah.
Not to go back to last episode, you should check it out on our Brew Strong.
Absolutely.
But these things are interesting challenges for craft because
They
you
are.
want to make something that doesn't taste like water, big beer, and you don't
All
want to
right.
taste like sticky sweet syrup because
Right.
it's so unfermented. It's just I love it. I love it.
All right. All right.
Sorry,
We're gonna take our
deviate.
final. No, no, no. Outstanding. We're gonna take our final break and come back. I think we have one more we can fit in for our Q&A show. So we'll be right back in just a few minutes. And we're back live on Facebook, delayed on YouTube on the Brewing Network's channel, and delayed on the podcasts about the same amount. Answering your Q&A questions. We answer them in a chat. We answer them from email, and we are on a mandate to answer every single one of them. And I might have missed one or two in the chat. Let me scan this. Oh, Richard missed the last show, so he does have a question then. So, all right, I'm glad we still have you on, Robert. My wife and I visited Hogshead when we attended the GABF. It was my fave stop since we had. Wait a second. This might just be congratulate. Did you pay
No,
for
there's
this
a
one, Robert?
question. There's a
Okay,
question.
okay. I'm thinking you might have paid for this one. Okay. It was my fave stop since we had just recently
Did
went
he
to
type it
London.
himself?
Oh, he's really good. Question: as a home brewer, what are the major mistakes made when first attempting to brew a cask ale?
Oh,
Interesting. Well, you're going to tell me, well, there's
that's a
none because I
huge
make
world to
perfect
have to
beer.
convey. Like, wow.
Get
I
a
mean,
top two. Let's do top two.
top
I
two.
tried to make a cask ale and it sucked. What was the top two reasons? If you can think of them.
As a home brewer trying for the first
Home
time.
brewing, remember, yeah, that's where it's
Yeah.
really challenging too, because you don't have the volume.
Well, all right. So I guess we have to figure out what we're considering a cask beer. Are they trying to put beer in a cask? Or are they trying to make a cask beer that they can bottle condition? I guess there's a lot of factors that I have to kind of wade through, I guess, with that. Um, if
If we're
I'm
let's see if
thinking
you've had this experience. Has someone come into the brewery one time and say, "Oh man, I tried to make a cask ale, but have you had that experience? Does that happen?" And maybe it's I tried to
I
make a
would
cask
say
ale,
more
but it blew
style.
up in my face.
What's that?
But it blew up
Oh,
in
it
my
blew up
face.
on
Yeah.
my face. Yeah.
that's what she
All
said.
right. I'm gonna assume that they have a vessel that they're conditioning in. I mean, going back to our last podcast, really, cask beer only comes in the conditioning stages of beer. That's when it becomes a cask beer. So if we're talking about conditioning, I would assume either I mean, for most home brewers, me being a past home brewer, temperature control is probably the biggest obstacle that homebrewers have to navigate in the process of brewing beer. Um, the other thing is oxygen pickup. I as a home brewer, the two things that I think kept me from making beer that I would say were exceptional was temperature control and just innate oxygen pickup through the process. I don't have to deal with any of that on the pro brewer level. Everything is a closed system. I control my fermentations. Fermentations are probably the most crucial aspect of beer. Like boiling is pretty easy. Fermenting is meticulous, and it should be treated as such. That's how I feel. And I know that that is an obstacle for homebrewers. There's not a lot of temperature control. But I think that is the difference between making a great beer and making a beer that's maybe not so great.
I hate to tell newer home brewers how strongly I feel about temperature control because it's an expensive step when you're first starting. Um, and slightly digressing, I'm only talking about primary fermentation. You're
Yeah,
talking about once it goes in your cask, once it goes in your vessel, you still have to maintain temperature. It's the same problem homebrewers have when they start off and they bottle conditioned beers because they just take the bucket, they dump it in the bottle, and it's already got some sugar in there and a little bit of yeast left over, and they cap it and they stick it back in that 72-degree closet. And 3 weeks later, it's carbonated and tastes like ass because it's carbonated at 72 degrees in their closet. So and you mentioned that. I hope gentleman goes back and listens to the first show because you're aging your casks at cellar temp 50ish,
right. Right.
which is not easy for your ale yeast, but it's your ale yeast and you're dedicated to the process. It's going to have to happen. So you're re-fermenting ale yeast, very cold temperature, much colder than they've been for the last week or so fermenting your beer, or how many days it takes you to get to that process. So it's not just continuing your 65 to 70-degree ale fermentation. You're chilling it and expecting that yeast to get the job done and make a clean finished beer again because it already clean finished once. You got to clean finish it again.
Right. Yep. Yeah, and I mean the conditioning period I think is one of the most overlooked periods of and important periods of finishing beer. I really do. I think a lot of people rush beer.
Agree. Agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Couldn't agree more. Yep.
All right. Mic drop.
Yeah.
Oh, that was after the poetry. Man, that poetry was a mic drop. But you can have two in a given night. That's fine with me. All right. So I think we covered this question. And Mike, I appreciate the nudges telling me about the question that I missed all of the nudges.
Oh,
And
it's all
Richard, thank you
good.
very much for your question.
Neil, what do you think about that? What are the things that you've
Okay.
experienced?
I'm going to take a completely different slant here, totally left field. I'm going to assume that his question is more, I'm trying to brew a British style beer, AKA
Yeah.
cask ale. So my only recommendations there would be what we talked about in the last show as well. If you're going to brew a British beer, I'll heart my good friend Jamil. Make sure you use British ingredients. Uh, we talked a lot about fermentation. I think fermentation is everything in a beer, regardless of the style. Not
100%.
not everything, but it's nowhere near gets the attention it needs. And British beer is no different. If it's a 3.8% bitter, you need a yeast, an English style yeast with some ester character if you really want to produce a beer that tastes like what I would call cask beer. The Germans do Helles and that kind of stuff, like we talked about
Out.
earlier. In a they do cask barrel fermented lagers that they throw up on the bar and they serve them. That's a little bit different, right?
But they even do alt, which I think is an ale style yeast, but it's
Yeah,
and it's still
yeah.
different.
But when you get to what I don't think of that as cask beer. When someone
Right.
says cask beer, real ale, all these terms mean the same thing to me, and it goes back to British beer, Scottish beer, Irish beer. UK brewing tradition is where I see it, and to do that, you need that style of beer recipe, and you need to use as close as you can get ingredients to those style of beers. Everything else you guys said is spot on. The process
So
part
no
of it is absolutely critical.
no offense to Breeze, no offense to RAR, but if you're making a British ale, use British malt, use British hops, use British yeast.
You just won't get the same. Jamil's has mentioned this multiple times. Go read
Yep.
his book, Brewing Classic Styles. If you want to brew a British beer, you need to use those malts, not because they're so much more superior to a raw or whatever. No, they're different in character.
Yeah,
They're
different.
grown in a different region of the world. They're processed differently, and that's what made those beers what they are today. So
Yeah. I love that.
That and
That is
process.
awesome. I
I'll
think
get
this
off my
show is
soapbox
like
now. Sorry.
killing it right now, by the way. I just think our commentary on what it takes to make beautiful British beer is going to help people make beautiful British beer. And I think this has been
And I hope
amazing,
so.
guys. And I
I
really
really hope
appreciate
so.
you for both the last two shows. And people need to listen. And I'm so stoked. So
You're doing a great closeout. You want to mention our sponsors?
So I will mention Blickman Engineering. They are your go-to source for elegant engineering solutions for your brew day that make beer easier and simpler to make. And I'm a huge user of these products, and you should be too. Is there another sponsor?
But no, that's excellent. Thanks for joining, everybody. Really appreciate you tuning in for our Q&A. Thanks to our guest, Robert Bell from Hogshead Brewing, phenomenal cask ales, etc. Neil Spake, our great friend, Big Mike TC here. Let's see, upcoming shows. We are going to have Michael Tonsmeyer on from from Sapwood on sour ales, and we're going to do a separate wild ale show as well. And we're going to keep throwing these Q&As in. We're going to answer your questions. We're following the mandate. We're going to keep brewing strong, right, Mike?
Yeah. Brew Strong.
Thanks,
Brew
everybody.
Strong, everybody.